Welcome to the Aspect NFTs on StarkNet workshop. There we go. Sean, welcome. Sorry, I couldn't find you in the waiting room, but we got you now. Thanks so much for coming to join. And thank you to all of you that have come today and joined us for the workshop. We've had a fantastic couple workshops, and today's not going to be any different, I'm sure. Yeah, so Sean, when would you like the participants to ask questions? Are you happy throughout your presentation, or would you like it at the end of your presentation? Completely up to you.
I think I prefer at the end of the presentation.
Okay, perfect. So can you please hold on to all your questions till the end of the presentation? You're more than welcome, if you got one on the spot, just drop it in the chat and I'll make sure they all get asked. But yeah, thank you so much to everyone that was here. I'll be dropping a whole bunch of links in the chat while Sean goes on with his presentation. But yeah, over to Sean. Sean, thanks so much for being here. Enjoy.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you very much, Jake, and I appreciate the kind introduction. And it's great to be back here on Encode. I think I did a workshop about StarkNet JS a couple months ago, so I'm really glad to be back. So my name is Sean. I'm the founder of Aspect.co, and more recently, StarkScan. And today I'll be talking about NFTs on StarkNet. So I think let's start off with like, what is an NFT, right? And I think a good analogy would be maybe looking at what Bitcoin is. So if you look at the Bitcoin blockchain, essentially you have like numbers attached to wallet addresses, right? And the numbers sort of tell you how much Bitcoins you own. I think with NFTs, that's similar, except that it's not just numbers. You have like the NFT URL, which points to the image, and other metadata about what the NFT is. So I think that's sort of a good analogy about what is an NFT. And I think a very common question is like, can I just copy and paste the JPEG, right? I mean, you can sort of do that in real life as well, right? Like you can go see the Mona Lisa and take a picture of it. But I think the important factor is ownership, right? And I think NFTs are the only way you can really verify that the digital asset was minted by the original artist. And you can sort of see that on the blockchain as well. And the value of the NFT really comes from the ownership of it on the blockchain that tells you the information about the original minter or creator of that NFT. And just a little bit background about my journey with NFTs. I think I first saw NFTs in mid to late 2017. I'm based in Canada, so I saw a bunch of University of Waterloo interns building a marketplace only for CryptoPunks. And I think that at that time, CryptoPunks was basically free and then not at the cost it is now. Unfortunately, I didn't get any myself because I didn't really like the aesthetics at that time, but I think now I obviously come to appreciate it a bit more. And then at the end of 2017, I think CryptoKitties really put NFTs on the map. And then more recently in early 2021, my co-founder and I, we started building sort of a ranking site that ranked the top selling NFTs by day, by week, by month. And the day we sort of put that website live, we basically saw a bunch of monkeys, right? And that was the day that Bored Ape started minting. And that really, like piqued our interest in what the whole NFT market. And we basically saw the whole growth of what the NFT ecosystem to what it is today. And I think it's really important to understand the economics of NFTs, right? I think that the main value prop of NFTs is actually in its royalties, which there is a lot of debate on Twitter these days. But essentially, sort of when an NFT creator sells an NFT, let's say they sell it to me as a collector, right? And then I trade that, I sell that NFT to Jake. When I sell that NFT to Drake, the original artist actually gets a royalty. And if Jake trades it to somebody else, maybe John, for example, the original artist also gets 10% of that trade. So I think it's actually a very beneficial business model for creators, right? Like if you look at traditional art, for example, if Van Gogh, for example, right, had a very tragic life but when he sold his art during that time, he wasn't able to really capture much value, right? It was only when he died, people started selling his artwork, but he still was never able to capture the value, right? The value was captured by the intermediary sales in the secondary marketplace. And I think what's really interesting in this case is the original artists always can benefit, and I think sort of that sort of model really benefits the original creator. And what we've seen is like marketplaces take 2 to 5% on every sale. And obviously the market really peaked in mid to late 2021 of last year. So I think there's some marketplaces that sort of specialize in different areas, where we have like general marketplaces, which is sort of what we're building here at Aspect. Also another general marketplace on StarkNet is MintSquare. On Ethereum, we have like OpenSea, Rarible, LooksRare, X2Y2. On Solana, we have Magic Eden. They basically trade any NFT that sort of follows the ERC 721 or 1155 NFT standard. And they basically allow any NFT to be traded under the sun. And then we have like aggregators, which sort of aggregates the orders of these general marketplaces. So then sort of people that are buying and selling can sort of get the best prices and the best liquidity. And then we have like very specialized like art and one-of-one NFT marketplaces like SuperRare and Foundation. Those are less like collection based, where you sort of see like Bored Ape or CryptoPunks, but really individual artists trying to make a living selling their digital art. And then we have like other more newer and interesting models like NFT AMMs with SudoSwap. Basically, they try to trade the floor price of a collection, and people can provide liquidity and swap in a permissionless fashion. And I think alluding to what I talked about in the marketplace, there's some different genres, right? Like art and one-of-ones, sort of individual artists. We have obviously the 10K PFPs, like 10,000 monkeys, 10,000 cats, or different sort of animals. We have generative art, which is sort of like art blocks where people try to put code on chain, and that sort of on-chain code generates a piece of art, which is also very, very interesting. And we've seen sort of NFTs with real life utility, right? I think I've seen like people buying like Washington Wizards and an NBA team buying their NFT, and then shortly after they ship you a Washington Wizards jersey. And then like DAO tokens as well, right? Like, so when you buy an NFT, you sort of get access to a Discord channel that's like token gated, right? Also like a lot of brands like Coca-Cola did an NFT, Pringles did one, like a bunch of NBA teams like Golden State Warriors, and also celebrities trying to I guess monetize their brand value. And then we have like virtual goods, right? Like things like Decentraland, people buying tokens. And also recently I've seen like Big Time Studio also launch their game. You can buy NFTs that sort of can be used in those virtual environments. And we have like really primitive NFTs like loot, basically some sort of primitive infrastructure where people can define like some sort of items, and then people can build on top of these items like experiences. And I think maybe I'll speak on that a bit later, but I think Brick is sort of similar, where they sort of give you tools to build Legos as NFTs, and sort of what you do with them really is up to your creativity. So I think those are some of the really interesting genres of NFTs. So just to continue, like what are the specific use cases? And I think in this section, I'll focus on sort of the use cases that we've seen emerging in the StarkNet ecosystem. So I think games is the really obvious one, right? Like because StarkNet is a much more scalable blockchain, people can really do a lot of on-chain gaming. And I think what's really interesting with on-chain gaming is you can really define the games via a smart contract, right? And then people can sort of play on it. And if you don't like the rules, or you prefer to play a game in a different way, you can sort of deploy your own version of those games with your own rules, right? And then people can create their own ecosystem there. And I think with on-chain games, you can really see every single move that was made on-chain and exactly how you got to the end result. So that was really interesting. I think Vitalik famously said that he started thinking about blockchains whenever he was playing a World of Warcraft, and then they sort of, changed the rules on him, and he was really upset. And I think, with on-chain gaming, that's like that could happen, but you can obviously take it into your own hands and create your own ecosystem that way. Yeah, and I think another use case, I think it's more sort of a vanity use case, right? Like people signaling, I guess, who they are or their personality. I think just like in real life, people wear certain things or like buy certain things to sort of tell the world what they're about. And I think NFTs is sort of like that, but in the digital space, right? Like Tom from StarkWare owns like a sort of or ape derivative, right? And then like Sil from the Bricks team and Loaf from the Realms team also own Ducks NFTs. And I think the most interesting thing is like really digital monetization and creator tools, right? Like if you think about digital media in general, it was, if you're an artist, right, it was very hard to make a living independently. Usually digital artists sort of work for marketing agencies or like game companies, right, creating art. But I think, and even like, people that create memes on the internet, right, they don't really capture any value, even though I would say they created a lot of value, especially when some of these things go viral. And I think NFTs is a way that those people can kind of finally get rewarded, right? I think Beeple is sort of the most lucrative example of that, when he sold sort of his NFT for like millions of dollars. But also like, some of the favorite memes that we've sort of seen on Reddit and all over the internet, they're also the original artists also started getting rewarded, which is really, really good to see. And I think some of the StarkNet native creators we're seeing is like Ducks Everywhere. He basically makes ducks out of the Brick protocol, which is like a Lego, and he makes like these ducks that he sells to people. And then like obviously other news aggregators, right? They also aggregate a lot of information for StarkNet, and then he sort of attaches an NFT to it. So he can also sort of monetize sort of his efforts. So I think there are a couple considerations in NFTs and the StarkNet ecosystem that's quite important. I think obviously plagiarism is a big issue, because essentially anyone can mint any digital file, even though when people check, they will realize. But I think the ability to do that is still an issue. And I think to really know whether the art is legitimate, you have to know who was the guy that created it, right? And then wallet addresses are mostly sort of verified via Twitter, right? Because Twitter sort of have their own verification system, and people that are verified on Twitter will link their wallet address and say like, hey, if this NFT is from me, like it's legitimate. And marketplaces are also trying to verify, but I think verifying in general is always a very challenging problem. And I think the other one is scalability, right? Like during the bull market, when you try to trade or buy an NFT, you're paying over $200 in gas fees. And I think that really limits what the potential of NFTs could be, especially NFTs with like very, very high supply, right? Like if you have like 200,000 NFTs, you probably won't have very expensive NFTs each. And if your NFT is like $1, but you're paying like over $200 in fees, doesn't really make sense. So it really limits like high supply collections, and you can't really do anything in terms of on-chain gaming, right? Because each transaction is too expensive to run. So I think what StarkNet does really well is like it attempts to solve the scalability issue, right? And how it works is it's essentially on StarkNet, it takes a lot of transactions and then it turns it into one transaction via a validity proof, and then it sends it to Ethereum for Ethereum to verify. So it's sort of like a batching function, right? Like you have, you can think of it like a zip, right? You zip a lot of files together, and then when you zip that file, it's smaller, and then you just verify that that zip is correct, and you get like over 100x in gas savings, right? Because you can batch many transactions into a single transaction. So I think when you're looking at building NFTs on StarkNet, the challenge with StarkNet is it's written in Cairo, and Cairo doesn't currently support long strings. And a lot of NFTs are linked to images, right, which is somewhere on the internet. And usually links are a very, very long string that is not very well supported in Cairo. So to sort of work around that, we use an array of felts. So felt is the native data type in Chiral and StarkNet, and people sort of use many felts to put together a long string. And I think another consideration is regenesis, which means the block in I think Q4 or Q1 of next year, StarkNet is going through a regenesis, which means that it's going to stop supporting older sort of Chiral contracts. And I think if you are to want to build an NFT contract on StarkNet today, you should really use the proxy pattern so you can sort of upgrade to the new version of StarkNet, or else you're going to not have a great time when you're trying to migrate your assets over. So I would very much encourage the proxy pattern. So you can have a proxy contract that you can sort of point to the updated version of your NFT contract. Yeah, so let's have a demo of NFT collection. I have sort of my code base here, which I will open, which is already open source, but I will link. It's linked in the slides later, which you will see in the next slide. So essentially, this is my ERC 721 Chiral contract, and like I said in the previous slide, they don't support long strings. So we have sort of a long string library that is being imported here. So you here. So you see the token URI library. So this library sort of supports the longer strings, and then we sort of add the functionality to our smart contract. Because this ERC 721 is based on the Open Zeppelin. So Open Zeppelin is sort of like a security company that standardizes a lot of these contracts, including ERC 721, which is the NFT contract. And yeah, so we sort of build on top of that to support long strings, so you can actually see images on a marketplace-like aspect. The reason they don't want to support it now, because Open Zeppelin thinks that in the future, long strings will be supported in StarkNet/Chiral, which is probably true, and they're just waiting for the native support to come, which I think is reasonable. So for us, I think for a workaround, at this stage, we have to sort of write our own long string library for our NFT contract, which we import here. So yeah, but everything else should follow the Open Zeppelin contract. And if you want to learn more about the NFT smart contract /ERC 721, I highly encourage you to look at the Open Zeppelin documentation. So let's try compiling. So I'm using Nile, which is sort of a dev tool for StarkNet. I'm going to compile my my ERC 721 contract. Yeah, and as it's compiling, I'll sort of describe the script that I wrote. Essentially, I'm taking a compiled, so I'm using StarkNet.js, which is a JavaScript library for StarkNet. And then we're taking the compiled ERC 721 contract, which it is done now. And we're defining the token URI, so where does the image gets pointed to whenever we look at the NFT marketplace. For testing purposes, I just linked it to my GitHub, but the best practice is to use something like IPFS, right? So it's more decentralized, and not everyone can just take that image down and change it. So I would highly recommend not using something like this, but this is only for testing purposes. So basically, I just deploy that contract using the deploy contract function from StarkNet.js, and I define the name of the contract, define the symbol. So I'm going to deploy like a Pokemon contract, and then I'm going to define the owner, which is this is my wallet address. So only the owners can mint NFTs because it's following the Open Zeppelin standard. And then the token URI is sort of my GitHub link, which will define the images. So we can try running this file. So this should deploy the NFT contract that I compiled previously. So we can look at the status of the deployment here. Yeah, so it's received, and then it should be going to accepted on L2, which is sort of finality on pending and accepted on L2 and L1. So different levels of finality on StarkNet. And So I think eventually you'll have it as a pending or accepted on L2, and then you can sort of run a mint function, and then you can sort of mint your tokens, right? So here I'm minting, I would like to mint to myself. So I would put my own wallet address, and I would put like token ID 1, 2, 3, 4. So with this test repo, we support token IDs up to 9. So all the metadata data is here. So you can mint 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And I think the result that you should see is something like this on Aspect. And you just put in /collection/ the contract address. And you'll have like a sort of Pokemon collection on Aspect. And this is only for testing purposes, right? I'm not going to sell NFT, like Pokemon NFT tokens. So I mean, when you do want to sell real tokens, I highly encourage you to sort of use your original work. But for this demo, you know, I'm a big fan of Pokemon, and I kind of grew up on Pokemon, and thought this would be a very interesting and cool example. And yeah, so all the instructions are here in the logs, right? So you can check your status of the NFT collection. So once the transaction is done, you would go here and then go to the Write Contract tab, right, to mint your NFT. And then you can click on the mint function and then put in your wallet address and also the tokens 1, 2, 3, 4 up to 9. And then once the mint transaction is done, you can go to your collection on Aspect and see your NFT. And for Aspect, we pick up all NFT contracts on the blockchain. So once you sort of is able to mint them, we should pick them up in a couple of minutes. So yeah, that's sort of a demo of an NFT collection on StarkNet. And I think those are some of the really helpful links that really help. Obviously, so this is the link to the workshop, which is sort of this source code here. And also other things that I think are very helpful are sort of what's available in the StarkNet edu site. Obviously, the Open Zeppelin standards, right, for ERC 721 contracts. And I think Immutable also has some really interesting contracts that support like long strings and also other features. So yeah, that's it from my side, and really appreciate your time. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask me.
Thank you so much, Sean. Someone's been minting NFTs while you speak, and now one of theirs is for sale, which is pretty cool.
Right.
And Fox has asked again, what, yeah, you can drop, there's a couple questions in the chat, I'm sure. You want to check them out, I can read them as well.
Very sure.
Fox asked, what is Regenesis?
Oh, Regenesis. So Regenesis is the release of Cairo 1.0, which is one of the newer upgrades in Cairo. Right now, Cairo is on 0.10, and I think 0.10.1 is going to be released. And I think Regenesis is when they will sort of think about like a blockchain. Well, before they called it a blockchain reset. And I think now they're sort of naming it that they will not support older versions of Cairo, right? So 1.0 or before, they will not support it. So you will have to migrate your sort of tokens over to the 1.0 version, which will be supported by StarkNet. Yeah, so I'll be uploading this PowerPoint to GitHub, and I can coordinate with the Encode team as well, where the GitHub link is, and the PowerPoint will be there as well. So a lot of these contracts we use from Open Zeppelin, and they're sort of the standardization. I can't find your source code. Yeah, so I think Aspect, we don't have NFT. Well, we do have an NFT contract, but we follow largely the Open Zeppelin. Yeah, so it is a fork of Open Zeppelin because we want Open Zeppelin to standardize the contracts. So our trading contracts are not open source yet. Yeah, our exchange contracts are not open source. I think just because like with Cairo going to 1.0, I think we would like to, I think we may open source it later down the line when Cairo is more mature.
And then there was a question early on, did the same guy make StarkNet JS aspect and SnarkScan.
Yes, that's all. Yeah, that's all me.
Is it all you? I think that was in a joke, probably. Okay, perfect. If there are any more questions, feel free to pop them in the chat. Otherwise, we'll wrap it up there. Sean, thank you so much. That was super insightful. And I'll coordinate with Sean to get the slides and put them on the Discord. Yeah, on the StarkNet Discord and the ZK Bootcamp Discord. Yeah, so thank you so much. And yeah, that's it. No more questions popping in. Sean, I think we'll call it there. Thank you so much for coming today, and enjoy the rest of your day.